This is the second movie in the Aging Gratefully series about how intentional community members can be helpful to each other as we get older. Our story today is about exercising, brain health, and neighborhood relationships. The focus of this project is Germantown Commons in Nashville, Tennessee. Meeting with friends, gathering with family on holidays, relaxing at neighborhood or workplace parties are activities for exchange of thoughts, team building, and emotional support. Do interpersonal relationships translate into better health as we age? In fact, I'm working on this project that's about whether or not health and exercise, which was the basis of the study, has any bearing on whether people live in an intentional community like cohousing. Intentional communities are the perfect laboratories to learn whether living and recreating together result in longer, happier lives. Coincidentally, one of my neighbors circulated a flyer about a study at the University of Colorado, which is intended to measure just that. Curious to find out about how physical health relates to forming positive relationships, I signed up.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic man.
Professor Angela Bryan is the University of Colorado principal investigator behind the Aging, Exercise, Brain Health, and Positive Relationships study.
Right now, the demographics of the United States are such that we're an aging population, right? And in some ways that's great because we're living longer than ever before. But the challenge in adding all those extra years to life is to make them quality years, right? So how can we keep people functioning independently, being able to do all the things they enjoy, and having a high quality of life as they get into older and older ages? So we were really interested in seeing if we could use physical activity as maybe a tool to help older adults increase their quality of life. And since we're neuroscientists, we're interested in how the brain might mediate those effects. All that sort of combines to the FORCE study, where we look at older adults who aren't optimally active, who could be more active.
I took some physical tests to determine my initial stamina level, some mental quizzes to check my memory. NLSB.
Yes.
And an MRI to establish my baseline brain functions. I was deemed a fit research subject and walked on a treadmill for 30 minutes at 2.5 miles per hour, 3 times a week, 48 times over 16 weeks. Afterwards, I was retested to see if I had made any improvements.
What we're very interested in is what are the impacts of exercise on the brain and how do those translate to the things that we know are important for quality of life, like being independent and having a good social life and things like that. There are two different levels of physical activity, as you mentioned. One is a lighter level of physical activity, but it's actually what's been studied the most. What we're interested in, though, is the extent to which maybe a more intense level of activity might have even more effects, so more bang for the buck, if you will.
There are plenty of research studies that show that good relationships powerfully influence our long-term health in positive ways. That's good news for people like me who have chosen to live gregariously. Throughout college, I lived 4 years in the Hastings College dorms. Early on, I chipped in with 2 other guys, and we bought a house in Gillette, Wyoming that became known as the 3003 Club. Later, I lived in an apartment above the Ace Hardware store in Lander, Wyoming. That was my first experience with mixed-use urban living before it became trendy. I now live at Silver Sage Village Senior Co-housing in Boulder, Colorado. Co-housing consists of a group of people who own their own homes, have separate lives, but choose to live together and create relationships around common values. Members also share in the upkeep and maintenance of shared amenities such as trees, gardens, and the common house. Architect Brian Bowen has designed a variety of intentional communities, including Silver Sage Village and Germantown Commons in Nashville, Tennessee, which opened its doors in 2015.
Germantown Cohousing was a self-developed community, and all cohousing communities use the future members as clients or as residents as an input into the development process. So in the case of Germantown Commons, the community members themselves made the decisions on how many units, how they're arranged, all the way through the design process. And the way we do that is we use a series of workshops. And we start with a general and work towards a specific. It starts off with getting it built and the idea of how do you actually tackle this thing? How do you eat this elephant one spoon at a time? And then moves into the site organization and into common facilities and into the details of your own individual units. And then into details of finishes and all the way through into construction.
Brian has first-hand knowledge and experience about his designs since he lives at intergenerational Wild Sage Village, also a co-housing community in Boulder, Colorado.
In the forming stages, you see really distinct expressions of personality. Some people want to be on every team and they want to control how every team operates and what gets done. Other people are much more willing to sit in the back and let other people do the work. Both of those impulses can be problematic in the forming stages of a community and definitely during the living stages of a community. I think that co-housing can be a format for self-examination and learning from those processes. If you are the type of person who wants to be on every team and control all of the things that are happening in a community, fairly quickly the community will provide feedback that that's not appropriate, that they want you to play your role, but they don't want you to overstep and prevent people from playing their roles too.
He says the basic idea behind co-housing is to intentionally create relationships among neighbors.
One of the characteristics of co-housing is that they're self-managed, typically. So that means that there's a certain amount of work that just needs to get done, whether that's cleaning the toilets in the common house, mowing the lawn, pulling weeds, doing the taxes, running finances, or cooking food for each other. There's a fair amount of work that needs to be done, and after a period of 5 years in my own community at Wild Sage Co-housing, we did a Getting the Work Done workshop, where we went through and listed every task that we do for the community. And we found that after compiling all of these efforts and all these hours through work diaries and stuff like that, it only really required about 3 hours a month from each individual, which is not a very high amount of commitment. The idea is that you find a way to work in the community on things that you enjoy working on, with people you enjoy working with, and then by doing that, we were able to accomplish all the work that needs to get done.
I now wonder about intentional communities, the interpersonal relationships formed there, the importance of physical activity, and overall happiness. I met with members of the Germantown Commons co-housing community. All moved into Germantown Commons from around the greater Nashville area. Chris was involved as the community liaison with the construction company during the project development.
We all are intentionally here because we want to have that interaction and that interdependency.
He and his wife Mary later encouraged their niece Sarah and her son Harry to buy a place in the community.
Be in an area, in a community where people are all saying, I want to know my neighbor. So knowing that I'm not just going to be, it is a support system, and it's also just, sometimes the support is just walking outside and just smiling at each other.
Essie had a serious health emergency shortly after the community opened.
About 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with these very sharp pains, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I called my next door neighbor, Suzanne, and asked her if I should call 911, and she said, you should have called them first.
When rushed by ambulance to the hospital, her neighbor Suzanne was her main caregiver.
Well, the other thing is, if she hadn't seen me in a while, she'll get her key to my place and come right in to see if I'm okay, and I really appreciate it. You know, I'm always fine.
Vicki and her partner Susan feel as though they moved into Germantown Commons because of fate.
This place had been spoken for by a young woman who had multiple sclerosis. We got, everybody's biography was sent to us online. So I was reading it, and I read in Sophia's biography that she went to the same high school as my daughter. Come to find out they were classmates. So I've always said this was Sophie's place in honor of Sophia. It's always felt like it was meant for us to be here.
Doug moved into the community to have more neighbors around.
Significant activity here. Our garage has got, I don't know, a couple dozen bicycles maybe who are hanging on racks. People here have got their bicycles who go on bicycle rides. We chose a location for the community that's very close to parks and things like that. So walking in parks or walking just to go to the store with other people, or sharing shopping carts that we can get stuff from. That's a source of a lot of activity.
As did Ginger, who is the newest resident.
So I've been a runner for over 40 years, and there's miles and miles of greenway that starts right up the road, for like a half a block from here, to bike and run on. We're really a half a mile, I think, from the Cumberland, where I can drop my kayak in the water.
New York is a great city, but the stress.
Let's get the hell out of here. This is a commune.
We prefer intentional community. We're not a bunch of hippies sitting around playing guitar.
Welcome to the Elysium community.
As they've become more familiar with what it takes to form a co-housing neighborhood, do these residents have any pointers?
I think some form of co-housing can be for everybody. I've visited, between 50 and 60 co-housing communities around the country, and there's a lot of different permutations of it. And the design work that we've done on different communities has really different personalities. We've done dense urban projects and really spaced out semi-rural projects. And so maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of folks, it's more of a question of figuring out what you want, how that jives with a potential community, and seeing what can be shared.
Within themselves, I think a really important thing is that you've got to know that you're willing and able to be a cooperative part of a harmonious group. You can't come into this being a person who wants to be in control of other people.
It's terribly inefficient to make a decision and to get things done. If it were my house, I would just go do it. Instead I spend my 2 hours processing on it and writing, how we ought to do it and considering it, and you multiply that by 25 households, and now you've got 100 or so man hours of time trying to decide whether we should get Heinz or Hunt's ketchup.
Watch what happens when Heinz ketchup takes on Hunt's. One-on-one. It's Heinz that wins this test, time after time. And it's Heinz that wins this test, too.
Hunt's ran. Heinz didn't.
And when tested in homes like yours for best taste, Heinz beat Hunt's again. Now, which ketchup do you want on your hamburger?
I really had to examine myself coming into this and make sure that I wasn't going to come here with a need to do that, to make sure that, the floors are perfectly clean in the common house and the gardens are perfectly kept like I would keep my property and such. I need to gentle down. And I think that's an important, and it's a good thing for me to do, to learn to live in acceptance of other people's ways and lifestyles and such. And maybe if I had done that years ago, I wouldn't have been divorced.
But I think the other piece of it is, and I've already seen this happening, is we quit worrying about whether it's Hunt's or Heinz ketchup. I don't care, just give me some ketchup.
Consensus has a bad rap. And we're going to have a workshop here this weekend where we refine our consensus process. And I'm looking forward to that. A lot of people think it means that one person can hold up everything. And a lot of people, people just have all kinds of wrong ideas about what consensus is.
I would, highly recommend it to somebody who somebody has to be somewhat progressive and open-minded. I mean, it's adjustment from, what normal manner of living in the United States, having your own castle and making your independent decisions, but being isolated. And if somebody, wants to make that change and recognizes the value in it, that'd be a good thing. So if they want to do that.
I'm learning slowly, and I've been in 2 years. I've been in longer, but we've been trying to do consensus for a long time, and I'm just now kind of starting to get it.
So different from what I grew up in, having your own bedroom, and so it's nice to think about that, and I think about that with the environmental impact, and so I don't know if we'll stay here forever. I guess.
Well, I guess I would just like to say that I'm new to co-housing, and even though, like I said, we've been thinking for years about wouldn't it be great if we could have a group of people that we knew, friends of ours, to form some kind of community. I don't know that I really believe that it would happen, but I'm so happy that the people in this community who started it had the perseverance and the wherewithal to really spend several years in the planning and designing of the community and actually funding it to get it off the ground.
And there's a few other young couples in the community. I don't know if they're going to have children soon or have children at all, but I would want more families around if I stayed here. I'd want I want my son to grow up. I would love for our community to have more kids. I'd like for him to have that, because I have what I need from adults. And so I do think about that with him, like he needs that social interaction. It would be really good for him to have it on the same level that I have in this community.
And then over time you learn everybody's personality, and so sometimes you realize, oh, well, that's the way that person is, so big deal, or whatever. You enjoy it all.
It might just happen. I think we might just look around, he might be 7 years old, and I might be saying, hang on, we're here.
It's been a miracle in my life. It's a blessing. I'll just be outside and somebody will be talking about something that we're trying to decide or we're arguing about, and then I'll just say, well, you know, this is the best miracle and blessing of our lives, you know. We'll figure it out.
Ray Bluth of St. Louis won the toss. He likes to start on the left side. All games starting from the left. Automatic Raymond, reaching, throwing, in.
There are a number of books written about social isolation. Robert Putnam, in Bowling Alone, writes about the loss of social networks and the lower levels of civic engagement. It's been nearly 20 years since Bowling Alone was published, and social isolation continues to be hazardous to our health.
Beauty and aesthetics are critical to the success of co-housing communities, because beauty is another way of creating affinity for the place. And having affinity for the place is what makes people stay, whether it's through architecture or through community connections. You're trying to use as many layers of connectivity and affinity as you can to create connections with people and the place. So having beautifully proportioned buildings, wonderful daylight, great gardens is all a part of that. And those things are all not increases to the baseline cost of a project. There are things that can be done usually for free if you're working with someone who's sort of masterful with design.
I had an apartment in the Nashville area, and I guess it was, if I say it was, as far as socially, which I think is fairly typical, the people, other people in the apartment complex, generally a few of them I might recognize, generally didn't know them or do anything with them in particular.
I had a house here in Nashville. I moved here to be near my grandchildren, and I was in the house about 10 years. And I fixed it up, you know, just like I wanted it. And I had an upstairs room. I took an attic and added an upstairs to it so that I could have company.
So I'm 54 years old, and my youngest of 3 kids, and they're 5 years apart, but my youngest graduated from college. And so I felt like I didn't need to have a house. We didn't need to have a house. My wife and I didn't need to have a house for the kids to come home to.
But then what I found out is it doesn't matter how many dinner parties you throw, people don't reciprocate. And people came to visit me, but I was still lonesome. You know, there was a great number of days that went by.
And I was pretty excited about the notion of urban living and being closer to where I can just sort of not only relax when I get home, but go out and recreate from where I live. And I didn't want my recreation to be work. I didn't want to walk out of my door and you know, go mow the grass for recreation. I wanted to go for a hike or a bike ride or something like that.
I lived about 30 miles away from here, and I lived in my childhood home where I've lived for 60 years. I've sort of been in and out of the state over the years. So I lived alone, and that's my story.
When I came in, I remember thinking, oh, this is great. Like, I'm going to go in, and it's going to be that support system that I don't have because I'm a single mom. And then I got here and I realized, no, being a parent is my work. But what I have is a different type of support. I have this support of how to live more consciously in the world.
Well, it was the way different I wanted. It's like people are there all the time. You just, when you want to talk to people, you walk out your door. Or I have a neighbor and we visit a lot together.
And once I got pregnant, then I realized how I wanted to be part of a community. I didn't want to just live kind of isolated, you know, not necessarily knowing my neighbors.
We kind of took the impression that it would be a great opportunity for us, Susan and myself, to kind of reboot our life together, because we'd been together for 22 years, 21 years at the time, and had the same furniture for all that time. And so we thought, hey, we can get rid of this furniture and, you know, move into a new place and get new furniture. So we really kind of looked at it as starting anew.
The concept of living in community and not being lonely was important. That was what kept driving me forward. You know, I had a vision, and I think that if people want to be a part of a community, which I believe is essential to good health.
She calls me Kramer because I just come running in and all the time.
I'm out.
What?
Yeah, I'm out of the contest.
And we share a dog. I have a little Chihuahua, and so we share it, and the dog usually spends the day over at her house. So, because her dog died just before she moved here, and she really didn't want to get a new dog, so we just share this little dog. And we've sort of become really close friends. And my best friend had died just before I moved here, so it's sort of a perfect transition.
Well?
I want to be alone.
Where have you been? I suppose I can cancel the Vienna contract?
I just want to be alone.
You're going to be very much alone, my dear madame. This is the end.
Doctors have known for decades that loneliness is bad for our health.
It's absolutely the case that interacting with other people in a positive way, yes, has some of those same effects because it relaxes us. It sort of increases the extent to which we can not be worried about things, not be stressed. So absolutely, things like, you know, helping other people, being in social clubs, definitely have some of the same effects. Anything that can decrease stress and sort of increase contentment, I would say, has the potential to have those same effects.
One study, which surveyed more than 309,000 people, found that loneliness and isolation increased the risk of premature death from all causes by 50%. That's about the same as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day or being a serious couch potato.
Out here they smoke for flavor. Flavor big and bold.
When I first came here, I'm on the end down there, so everybody had to go by me. And so I just had a party for about 2 weeks, you know. And then one day I hit the wall and I put up a sign saying, not receiving, you know, for a whole weekend. And nobody called me, nobody came by. And I just knew then that I had found the right people. They were willing to respect my privacy.
It didn't say don't interrupt me, it just said I'm not receiving, so it didn't feel really offensive. So it was a really kind of a nice icebreaker. So we really had the conversation in the community then about when is it appropriate to come and knock on the door and when is it not.
The community I had in Gallatin was, you know, people I'd gone to kindergarten with, and so certainly people I'd known a long time and appreciated and enjoyed. However, I work, and I work from home, and when you work, you don't have as much time to get out and socialize.
We have shades, and when we pull the shades down, I feel like people understand and observe that we want to have our privacy, and the shades are up, we're receiving. So it works out. It's, like I say, it's not formal, but we kind of all work together.
I am recently retired from hospice nursing, and I went from this crazy just people around me all the time and something to do to just a very isolated, lonely kind of an existence. And it was scary to think of spending this last chapter of my life like that.
So, and also as I'm nearing retirement age, I decided this would be something I wanted. It sounded fun. And so I joined right at the beginning when we were just meeting with the architects.
I think that this is an easy, natural way for certain kinds of single women to live as they age, as you go through retirement, because you can walk and there's people around, and you know, there's stimulation.
And I was telling someone in the community this recently, actually, that the biggest thing that this community has done for me is that it's released me from that isolation, which can happen. I mean, I think that happens in being a parent.
I think I'm more active with outdoor activities that I share with community members. I think it's also socially, I think that like the isolation, which is just a natural thing of kind of sitting in your own castle or somewhere.
You get so caught up in that rhythm of life and being there for your child, and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I haven't done anything that I needed, you know, all those other tasks and chores I needed to do today. And my aunt and uncle live in number 6, so I rely on them a lot too.
I'm much more in relationship with other people. We can share problems and solutions and things like that. I think that's very supportive, and so.
Really, this makes a big difference between just going and living in a condominium where I might communicate on and off with my neighbors.
Nurturing positive relationships with others are actions that require no specialized gear or equipment and happen through the everyday life activities such as taking a walk or attending a book club meeting.
You know, my experience in cohousing is based on being a father of 2 kids with a wife, and so we're in family mode, and I've got a job, and my wife works as well. And so the way we relate to our community is tied to how our lives are set up and how our family is built. Wild Sage, where I live, has a lot of different family types and a lot of singles and a lot of older folks and a lot of younger folks. And I think that the ability for you know, someone who's 70, 75, who's recently lost his wife, to come out of the house to a warm reception of loving neighbors is far superior than being alone during that time.
To have my great nephew 3 doors down is fabulous. I wish I were doing more to help Sarah, but I feel like I do a lot. So I think she gets a lot of support in the community. But even and as Harry's gotten older, it's gotten easier. But for her to get that support. But you know, she texted me a couple hours ago and said, "Hey, can you watch Harry from 5 until 5:30 tonight?" And I said, "Sure, I'm there." So and then so we'll have a great time here I'll get my fix of him for 45 minutes and that'll be that.
There's been multiple times where I've gone and I've ran out of milk at bedtime or nap time, and a neighbor has given me a gallon of milk. Or needing to go out and do something like change out a car seat, or things where I had to leave the house for like 10 minutes or so, and people came, and times where, you know, a neighbor hears that Harry's crying a whole bunch and they come over and say, "Could I take him, you know, for a stroll?" And it's just 20 minutes, but it's knowing also that I can go knock on someone's door, that I have that. It feels so different knowing that I can go to somebody, rather than if I just lived alone, I would know I'd have to get in a car to go to somebody.
Yeah, I've had a couple periods of time, Wild Sage, I've lived there for 12 years now, where we have needed help. And one was when my wife broke her hip several years ago, and we received a fantastic amount of help for that. And then just this fall, I broke my leg up in the mountains, and I had to be carried out of the mountains by Rocky Mountain Rescue on a litter. And then I spent a few days in the hospital, and had some other follow-up health problems. And that's a time when, you know, as a dad of a family with 2 small kids and a wife, and a business to run and, you know, other community involvements, I needed a lot of help. And so I had to transition from being the guy who helps to being the guy who's getting help. And that's not always the easiest transition.
A project we worked on recently was to get a AED, automatic external defibrillator, which you often find in public places and schools and gyms. And we decided to get one for our community and get a number of people in the community trained in CPR so that we, in a sense, we're doing something, an ordinary block in a city. People are not going to get together and say, let's share an AED and let's get training, so if there's any problem in the community, we can address it.
People at my community are so giving and so caring that they hear that you have a problem and their first reaction is like, well, what can I do to help you? And it's a genuine question. It's not, call me if you need a hand. It's like, tomorrow morning when I wake up, what am I going to do to help Brian? And so I had people bringing our family food every day for weeks. I had friends coming over just to spend time with me. I had people offering to drive our kids places. People took over work I had to do in the neighborhood and the community as well. And I think most importantly, there was a huge outpouring of love and care. And if you're trying to heal from something and you're trying to recover from an injury like that, there's really just no substitute for feeling like you're well loved.
It's been very natural to just wave, say hello. People have helped me with the moving in, and people have just been. It's been an easy transition for my shy self to start to fit myself into this group.
I think that was a good example of something we could do, you know, for each other and provide support to each other. I mean, there's kind of a sense in the community that there are other people out there to help you. You call somebody and you're sick, they can go get something for you and come across. So I think that sense of presence of support in the community is also important.
What I needed was a community. Desperately, I needed this. I needed kind of a faux family. I don't know. I needed to make my own family. It's not faux. I mean, it becomes real. It's your family of choice. It's chosen people. I needed that. I'm not a religious person, so I don't have church. I'm not a club person. The most that I've been a part of groups has been with sports, with groups of kayakers and, you know, skiing, biking, those kind of racquetball.
And somebody asked me recently what I felt when I was, you know, went to the ER, and I never felt afraid. I felt loved, and that is something that has never happened to me before. Well, I was in the hospital for 2 nights, and people came by, people texted me.
I had a bet about what was going on. I didn't think it was her heart, and so I bet her a turkey if I was right, and I won the turkey. So.
I know a lot of us ride bikes. We're fortunate, and one of the reasons I like this particular community is because it is downtown. There's lots to do downtown. There are sidewalks everywhere. So I frequently walk, as a lot of members of the community do, around the neighborhood. There's a greenway just a half block from here that connects to the downtown corridor. There's the greenway is accessible for bikes. A lot of us are bikers. Some of our members play golf. So there's lots of physical activity that goes on. And yeah, health is an important thing.
So what did it turn out to be?
Pulmonary emboli.
Well, that's nothing minor.
That's nothing minor, but it's not a heart attack.
But more than just our physical health, I think our mental health and our social health and emotional health. And I think it all happens here kind of in an unspoken way, in an informal way, but I feel good about it, and I think I feel better about myself where I am physically and emotionally, having been part of this community.
The first time I went to the doctor afterwards, he told me to walk but not briskly. And so the second time I went, he said, Maddie, which is my legal name, we're going to be talking about this when you're 90. You know, just walk, swim, whatever you do. So I'm just fine as far as I know.
Hi, Alge. Want a race? Okay. You ready, pal? Go. I beat ya. I beat ya.
The University of Colorado study is not quite completed, but so far the results are promising.
We are seeing changes in brain function as a result of the physical activity. So people are improving in terms of the way that they recruit brain regions to do the tasks that we ask them to do. And that's what we expected would happen. Interestingly, right now, there's not a huge difference between the two exercise conditions. So it will be fascinating to see if that keeps happening, and maybe it's, you know, activity and the intensity doesn't matter so much. But I'm really encouraged that we're seeing these, you know, definite changes in the brain from before people start exercising to after they finish.
And then when I had my test yesterday, I had shown some market improvement, really. I doubt I'll become the $6 million man as a result of this project, but the preliminary findings are perfect for not-so-active people like me. I'll be returning to the little yoga studio to bolster my mental and physical well-being.
Come back through cow pose as you inhale, shoulders onto back. And curl your toes and lift your hips, downward facing dog as you exhale.
I'm not much into aerobic activities, except for my annual Boulder 10K jog on Memorial Day.
200 miles behind, 800 I still can't see, getting down.
For a lot of people, being active isn't necessarily all that rewarding, right? So they do it, they know it's healthy, but it's not fun. And so doing physical activity with people, making an appointment to, you know, go for a walk with people, making an appointment to meet a friend for a hike, doing physical activity in a social setting can make it a lot more rewarding than slogging through it on your own.
Mr. Pendleton, you know where you are, don't you? I want you to look at me and listen very carefully to what I'm saying. Yeah? This is not a dream. I want to check out on Joseph Pendleton. When is he due to arrive?
Pendleton Joseph, due to arrive 10:17 a.m., March 20th of the year 2025.
Hey, so he jumped the gun. Anybody could have done that. Just put me back where you found me.
Joe, we can't put you into another man's body.
In 2014, while recovering from a big health scare, I chose more privacy away from my co-housing community in favor of catching up with family and friends from my various past lives. Brian Bowen says that cohousing is a good place for residents to self-reflect about their community purpose. Some of my very active neighbors have cut way back on their participation levels for one reason or another. I'll likely now step in to fill some of those voids.
We've had a couple of really tense meetings lately, and you're always wondering, how's this going to go? And both times, it was wonderful. We got things resolved by consensus.
I was talking to a girlfriend on the phone a little while ago, and she said, now I'm by nature a very anxious person, and I normally am like, ooh, you know.
It feels unfair at times, and you want to say, come on, it takes a village to do all this, and you guys are all part of the village. Let's pitch in. Yeah, so I think we're going to struggle with that more, because I think some of the people that are contributing a lot to make things work are going to start saying, you know, this isn't what I came here for.
Then afterwards we walked, you know, about 4 or 5 blocks down the street and to a burger joint and had a hamburger. And so there are enough people who want to do something after a tense thing like that.
She said that I seemed happier. She said, you've managed this. You've had your moments of being anxious, but then you come back. And she said, you just seem to be doing really well. So it shows even to people that have known me for 30, 35 years, you know. Yeah, and I feel more hopeful too. I feel hopeful about my retirement, my future, my next years, you know.
One of our community members passed away. Sophia, we all loved her so much, and it was really hard. And it was an eye-opener now that you mention it, of the fact that here's these people that we, you know, and have a new connection with, and you know, that's one example. But there's been other examples of the messiness of life that just happens as you're. You know, as you go through life, and you have this whole new connection of people where those messes are happening and you're participating in it.
You learn about a lot of things. In Gallatin, a lot of things I didn't even know existed until I got involved with this community. I'd never heard of permaculture. I'd never heard of a lot of different things. But in here, because people are so involved, that you learn the things that you want to be involved in.
My happiness quotient is much higher now. And, you know, I thought that occasionally I would say, oh, I shouldn't have moved here. But I have never said that. And occasionally I need to take a break. I go on retreat and get someplace where I have to be alone. But then I always look forward to coming back.
Even if you don't choose intentional community living, get off the couch, meet people in your neighborhood, join a club and volunteer, attend family gatherings whether you get along with your relatives or not, or any other spontaneous group activity. Your life may depend on it.